If we could get the teacher to pay attention, we might get started here. All right, we're in James chapter 4, around verse 11, which I think is where we left off. First of all, where's Brad? I see Jen. Hey, Brad, thank you for taking the class last week. I heard he stumped everyone with his Bible trivia questions. Thank you very much, though. Bev and I were away. We actually were in the Canadian Rockies, which to me might be one of the most beautiful places on earth. And definitely God's glory is manifested in those mountains. So we were just in awe the whole week, but it was a great trip. Glad to be back. James chapter 4. I'm hoping we can finish James in about another 2 weeks. And Charles, you're still on deck for Hebrews after that? So look about the second week in September maybe. All right. We actually read this last time, but we'll go ahead and refresh ourselves. Do not speak against one another, brothers and sisters. The one who speaks against a brother or sister or judges his brother or sister speaks against the law and judges the law. But if you judge the law, you are not a doer of the law, but a judge of it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, the one who is able to save and to destroy. But who are you judging your neighbor? Basic warning against speaking ill of or judging our own brothers and sisters. And I think that includes others as well, not just brothers and sisters of Christ. So I think this is a continuation of us drawing closer to God. In the previous verses, James was talking to us about coming together as Christians and drawing closer to each other, which brings us closer to God. In order to draw closer to God, we must also follow his law to draw closer to our brothers and sisters, and vice versa. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another, from John 13:35. So this is a common theme that's throughout the New Testament, and it's showing our Christian love shows us that we're in harmony with God's love for us. Very simple things. We have a good group this morning. Yeah. To the Gills. Charles.
A lot of people wear identification badges. I know that elders and deacons have a little thing you put on a coat. And in business, people wear ID badges. And what Jesus is saying here is that our ID badge is love.
Yeah, excellent.
We wear it that identifies us as a Christian.
Excellent. Did you get new glasses?
I paid a whole lot to see you.
Has it been away a long time?
Charles would work.
Yeah, he can't see me now. So I highlighted this again in red. But speaking against a brother or sister is a violation of the law to love one another, often called the royal law. And this violation of the law puts us in a position that we have judged the law, which is an authority we do not have. We just don't have that authority to judge the law. The law is the law. We have to obey it. We don't violate that. There's only one lawgiver and judge, the one who's able to save and to destroy. But who are you judging your neighbor? So here we are again, warned about against judging our neighbor. So how do we deal with people who use this verse or verses like this that, and other verses, which I'm going to list in a second, that deal with judgment? In other words, you hear people say, oh, don't judge me. You're told in the Bible, don't judge others or your neighbor. So I know that's a larger question. Let me maybe go through some of the verses where we see those things. So in Luke 6:37, judge not, and you will not be judged. Condemn not, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. John 7:24, do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment. Matthew 7:1-2, do not judge, or you too will be judged. And Romans 2:1-2, therefore you have no excuse, O man, every one of you who judges. For in passing judgment on another, you condemn yourself, because you, the judge, practice the very same things. I know there are many verses that people can use to kind of say, don't judge me. So how do you deal with that? How do you talk to other people and should we not judge other people? Or is it a different type of judgment that he's talking about? Bruce?
Well, I think the key is instead of, a lot of times we're really quick to say, well, you're wrong, or because of this you might be condemned, or, you're in a really risky place. The best thing I think to do is to let the Word do the judging, and if we put all the authority on the Word of God and say, I'm concerned because can we look at these verses that deal with what you see someone that's practicing. We're supposed to, when our brother or sister that is practicing sin, we're supposed to try to bring them back, guide them gently back to the straight and narrow pathway. And instead of doing it from a personal standpoint, we do it from the scriptural standpoint, and then it's God who's doing the judging through the Word, and the Spirit can convict through the Word.
Very, very good point. Charles and then Steve and Alan. Charles, Steve, and Alan.
Yeah, the judgment here that Jesus is condemning is a condemnation type judgment. We can certainly make a judgment as to whether a person is right or wrong, whether they're guilty of sin or not. But Jesus is talking, and it's implied in a couple of verses there about condemnation. We condemn ourselves. Don't judge in a condemning manner is what he forbids. He's not saying we can't make a proper judgment about someone.
And that kind of harmonizes with what Bruce is saying, because we're doing it from the scripture, not our own judgment, which could be wrong. Steve and then Alan.
Well, I'm just make my comment they've already made. You're not, you as an individual are not rendering the final decision. In other words, if I know somebody that says God's a hoax and that's a bunch of hooey and you're just wasting my time, and that I don't believe in heaven. Well, if I tell that person, well, look, from my understanding, you're really with that kind of attitude, you're not going to go to heaven. Well, that's not me sentencing him to hell. That's not. But let me just share this information. Let me just show you this. That this says this is the path to heaven. And are you saying I'm not going to go to heaven? No. These rules here say that as best we know, you're not. Now, you may get lucky, and I may have misinterpreted it. And you may have a relationship with God that I don't know about, but that's not my call. And after you die, it's over. You get one shot at it. And so this looks like a pretty safe path to me. And they keep on pushing back. And you're saying. No, I'm not. I'm just showing you a path. And because we had instructions, I think 2 weeks ago when you were there, we discussed that where, I mean, how do you reconcile the idea that, take a witness to your brother and then if it doesn't appear you take two and then we get the elders involved in it? Well, why are you going to this person? Because they're out of step with what the scriptures say their walk should be. And you're just, and if they become, it's not done frequently, but I mean, depending upon how public this violation of the rules is, eventually that person is withdrawn from us.
Yeah.
And so that's obviously a judgment disciplinary action against Christians. Can you withdraw from non-Christians? No. They're not Christians. They're not members.
Yeah. Alan?
Galatians 6:1 says, Brethren, ye who you find people who are weak in the faith, restore them. Don't judge them. We need to do like Jesus did with that woman who was accused of adultery. Where are your accusers? Where are those who are judging you? I don't see them, Lord. They walked away because they knew they had sins in their lives. Jesus said, neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more. He didn't say just go away and do it again. No, he said go and sin no more. When we approach people, either in the church or out of the church, let's have that mind of Christ. What would Jesus do?
Excellent.
He wouldn't judge. He would help. He would save. Now, if that person decides not to follow, that's between them and Jesus. All we have to do is encourage people, don't sin. Do what's right.
Lester, David, and then Chris. And then we'll try to move on. I think this could be a whole study on the judgment of others, righteous judgment. I'm sorry, Lester.
Curious, when I looked at this, it says, you know, it talks about the law. Well, what law? What law is it referring to? And what I come back to is in Jesus saying, you know, love the Lord with all your heart, soul, mind, and then love your neighbor as yourself. So that would be the law. The thing that I would say, if you're talking to somebody and they say, don't judge me, perception is reality. The way you're talking to them, are you showing them love, or are you showing them judgment? And so if they feel like they're being judged, doesn't matter whether you think you're judging them or not. Perception's reality.
Good point.
So you have to back off and talk to them about love.
David?
John 7:24 up there, do not judge by appearances. A number of years ago, we were up in West Monroe, Louisiana. That's at Church of Christ. That's where the Duck Dynasty, if you guys know.
Yeah.
But we were there for a week for a seminar, and at church on Sunday we went and we sat down in a pew like this, and this guy came in and he had tattoos from one end of him to the other. Big guy, huge. I wouldn't want to meet him in an alley. And he sat down beside me and he said, "Hello." And I said, "Hi." And I scooted over a little bit further. Okay. Before the preacher gave his lesson, he said, "I want to recognize a member of our congregation today who has this year has baptized his 50th person into this congregation. And would he please stand up?" Guess what it was? It was this guy right beside me, and he had taught and baptized 50 people that year. And that taught me a big lesson about judging people by their appearances, and you just can't do that. You can't do it. I learned a big lesson in that thing.
If you didn't know Phil Robertson, you wouldn't sit down next to him.
Yeah, he looked pretty
yeah.
mountain manish.
It was okay.
You know, I think people, when he asked them if they wanted to be baptized, they were afraid to say no.
It's like that card,
Yeah.
like that Valentine's card, "Be my Tootsie Wootsie or I'll break your armsy warmsy."
Chris, and then I'll give Henry the last say, because he did raise his hand there. Chris?
I was going to say pretty much the same thing that David was saying. We have to kind of, on our own, guard ourselves from allowing us to set a standard, and if people don't come up to our standard, then we're judgmental. And I think it may be a subconscious thing that like he's saying, that when this person walked in, we have to be so careful to not have this standard in our mind. I've heard other Christians say about other Christians, "Well, you don't know much about their spirituality," or whatever. I mean, how can I judge your heart? How can you possibly know my heart? So we have to be very, very careful about setting a standard in our own mind.
Mm-hmm.
God set the standard, we can't.
Even in the James passage, it says there's one lawgiver and one judge, so we have to remember that. Henry, and then we will move on.
Well, I just think of one, anytime we make a decision on something, we are judging whether that's good or not good, but I think that the fact is it according to our rules, or is it according to God's rules? And I think sometimes we just step out of what God's rules. And again, is whether you go and talk to somebody at work or talk to somebody over here, is it to try to make them better or just look good on yourself. And I think a lot of times we'll do the judgment just to look better. Oh, look, God, he's not as bad as I am. I mean, he's not as good. I'm not as bad as that. I mean, I'm awful, but I'm not as bad, instead of worrying about where we're going. And I think a lot of times we don't see things in our own self, that we're just as imperfect. We forget that that's when we need each other, in a sense that there are things that they have, that not that you should be just friends or connected to people just because of that, but but they do. Everybody has a story. Think about all the people that God put there. You know, even if they don't believe the Bible per se. When I went to USF and I had this religious teacher, a carpenter's son, David, the shepherd. You know, he wasn't the tall, though he was fair to look upon, as Phil Roberts would say. He wasn't a bad-looking guy either. But think about all the people that were so that nobody would ever know who those. You know, by and large. I mean, does what did somebody say? Does Bethlehem ever or provide any? You know, anything good comes out of there or whatever? And I think about David and not being that. I mean, Abraham or even people that Rahab, the harlot that hid those people. I mean, you just never know who. And I think a lot of times we just focus on the wrong thing.
Yeah, the comparison game is not a good game to get into. All right, let's move on. Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city and spend a year there and engage in business and make a profit. Yet you do not know what your life will be like tomorrow. For you are just a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. Walt, I think, even used that today in his invitation. Instead, you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will live and also do this or that. But as it is, you boast in your arrogance, and all such boasting is evil. So for one who knows the right thing to do and does it, for him it is sin. So what parable comes to my mind when we read these verses, or what comes to your mind?
The rich fool
Yes, yeah,
in Luke.
yeah, the building of the barns, and he was so proud of himself. That's the one I thought of, but I mean, anyway, whatever comes to your mind will work too. The older you get, I think the more you understand just how fleeting life is. You know, we've had several members pass away recently over the last year, quite a number. So life is very fleeting, very fragile. So we have to remember that as we make our plans. We have no clue how long we will live and what our life will be like tomorrow. Life is truly a vapor. Does this mean we shouldn't make plans for our future? Should we just go through life not making plans?
No.
No, that's foolishness. I mean, we have to make plans because we could live a long time. But the main thing is always factor in God's will and what the design is for our lives, and don't boast. We have to put God first. I didn't want to get too tedious, but I went through a couple of passages that even Paul was using the terms if the Lord wills it on 2 or 3 or not more occasions. He was always putting God's plan ahead of his own plans in Corinthians and Romans and things like that, or passages like that. So for one who knows the right thing to do and does not do it, for him it is sin. This is a difficult goal. I mean, because many times we know what the right thing is to do, but it might not be easy to do the right thing. Steve's laughing up here. So
I know I should pull those weeds out of the yard.
not as grass again.
But I haven't done it.
I don't think that would be a sin, though. That might be. Not to pull the weeds.
It's the right thing to do.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
Charles?
Yes, I'm sorry, Charles.
One of the problems we have in the world today is that they call evil good.
Yes, it's
That's the problem.
it's
There's no more evil, everything's good anymore.
it's so topsy-turvy. You're right, and they
things-
celebrate evil.
Yeah, and things that used to be done in the darkness of night is now done right out in the open.
Yeah.
And they're
Good
proud to
point.
do it.
Yeah, good point. Society has really exposed evil as good, or tried to.
Whatever works for you.
Yeah,
I
whatever
mean,
you
that's
want to do.
that's the thought, and before we go too far, it's as we say, it's nothing new. It's always been. Think about all the gods that were there when Paul got there, or even back then that the Gilgamesh epic, and all that the gods were upset, and that's why they rained the flood.
Mhm. And people don't want to be judged when they're doing these evil things in plain sight. So it goes back to the previous verses. Chris?
And we're not flexible. I mean, if we plan something and it doesn't happen, it doesn't come to pass. It's hard for some people to deal with that, instead of in that camper in that rainstorm.
With the guy with new glasses. But God does set a high bar for us in knowing if we know the right thing to do. It's too bad the world doesn't seem to have this same bar. If they only knew the right thing to do, I think this world would be a much better place. But in the Christian realm, this is our standard God has given us. James again uses wording to encourage action to show our faith. We know the right thing to do. It's an action that we have to do. It's not just once saved, always saved. If it was once saved, always saved, then we don't have to do the right thing because we're already saved. You get that? Baptist and saved. So any other discussion about this? I kind of went a little longer into that. Okay. Charles, you may be on deck next week. No, we haven't hit. Oh, there's chapter 5.
Won't be here next week.
You won't be here next week, okay.
I'll be
No, I
preaching
think
this
I can
chapter.
fill another week, yeah.
Okay.
Just not move on to the next person.
Yeah. So this is again one of those titles that I've put in, misuse of riches. It's kind of in my Bible as a little headline. It's not scripture, and we know that. Chapter 5, James. Come now, you rich people, weep and howl for your miseries which are coming upon you. Your riches have rotted, and your garments have become moth-eaten. Your gold and your silver have corroded, and their corrosion will serve as a testimony against you, and will consume your flesh like fire. It is in the last days that you've stored up your treasure. Behold, the pay of the laborers who mowed your fields, and which have been withheld by you, cries out against you, and the outcry of those who did the harvesting has reached the ears of the Lord of armies. You have lived for pleasure on the earth and lived luxuriously. You have fattened your hearts in a day of slaughter. You have condemned and put to death the righteous person. He offers you no resistance. So this doesn't paint a very pretty picture of those who focus on riches. And you know, we live in a very wealthy country. I mean, we're very prosperous compared to many other countries in the world. Not all of us are at the same level, which is never going to happen. But at the same time, we do live better than a lot of people. But I think there's things that we shouldn't be boasting in, and we shouldn't put our focus on those things. We all understand that, not just from this passage, but other passages. But that's hard to do when we're in this materialistic culture. So to me, this is very reminiscent of part of the Sermon on the Mount. And I thought of kind of Lazarus and the rich man. You know, the rich man had all the luxuries, and Lazarus was right outside his door, and the rich man never did anything for him. That's what I came to mind. Any other thoughts on that?
You know, well, of course, now those words were given a long time ago, and I think we're more likely to fall prey to that. Oh, that's awfully harsh, but we just to go back it down and say that we have sworn a portion of our wealth to Corbin. Well, that what are you talking about? Well, I have to retire. I have to prepare for this 30 years of unemployment. And where they didn't necessarily face that back then. You don't read of anybody in the Bible retiring. And so you didn't have to say, well, I got to have this much money in the bank because when I quit working, I'll have to live gonna take with you? Well, you just wanna have that last nibble, as they take that last breath, give them that last nibble. Well, you don't, we've already said, you don't know when you're gonna die.
No, you don't. And this Matthew quote is not Lazarus and the rich man. This is the storing up our treasures where moth and decay won't eat at them. So that's the Sermon on the Mount. I think I mentioned Lazarus and the rich man later, but Lester.
Yeah, since you mentioned Lazarus and the rich man, I guess forever, people have thought of the golden rule as the guy who's got the gold makes the rules, you know? And we have always looked at the rich better than we've looked at the really poor. But when you think about Lazarus and the rich man, here's Lazarus who went to heaven. He was a good man. I mean, he was a good Jew, whatever. He followed the law because he went to heaven. He had so much to offer those around him, but because he was poor and sick, people did not only help him, but they didn't think he had anything to offer.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it's a good way to look at that. I think in a couple more slides, I have something about that idea about the person with the gold makes the rules kind of concept. But Chris and then Bruce.
Part of the thing is that we are so in tune to the inequity in this life. But there are people here who can't pay their bills. And then I read an article this morning about the CEO of Cracker Barrel that makes $7 million a year.
Yeah.
How in the world can you spend $7 million a year? I don't understand. I mean, that concept can't be in my head. So I think it's where we are in life that we look at the inequity, you know, that it's like, well, that's not fair. Life's not fair. I told my children growing up, life's not fair. We just have to come to the grips with the fact that this life is not fair.
Good point. Before I get to Bruce's, though, I think we also have to realize, I wish we could read even further amounts of these scriptures, because they kind of build on each other as we go. I'm kind of taking a block, but it all ties into what James has been talking about in the previous chapter too. And it's hard to read, 2 chapters and then discuss it. So sometimes by blocking it out like this, you lose a little bit of the flow. Bruce?
I think a key is in verse 3, your gold and your silver have corroded, and their corrosion will serve as a testimony against you, and will consume your flesh like fire. That's a pretty graphic visual that God is giving us. And so it's not wrong to have things, as long as there are things that are used for the Lord and in serving the Lord. The Lord doesn't like it when people hoard, that they keep things for themselves. And that's, I think, what your gold and silver corroding is all about. It ought to be where these things are used. And so if we're gracious, the scripture also says, hey, if you give, God will give more to you, because you are one that is dealing with material things in the proper perspective. You know that, God wants us to share and to help others as we have opportunity. And if you do that, He'll replace it, because you'll keep doing that. Mm-hmm. And so we have to understand where enough is enough. It's okay to have something that you lay aside, but I don't think it's very much. I would caution that, hey, God can send down whatever you need, especially if you have the proper perspective.
Mm-hmm. Walt?
Verse 4, I'm jumping ahead of you, but verse 4 really is important to this discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm gonna
Go
read it.
ahead.
Behold, the hire of the laborers who reap down your fields, which is of you kept by fraud. Right. So the people he's addressing, one specific quality that he says is they have defrauded others to get those riches.
Yes, yeah.
Because there are people who are wealthy and generous and fair.
Yes.
And that verse 4 says, woe to you when you've gotten those riches on somebody else's.
Yeah, Steve has mentioned that before with some of the people he knows. I think Henry mentioned that with other people he's known. They do very good things with their money. They don't hoard things or defraud people. One other thing I want to point out is because of Matthew 6, which is in the Sermon on the Mount, I think it was Bruce and Walt early on in James, they mentioned to me how closely paralleled James's epistle is to the Sermon on the Mount. I think there was 80% of it is the same. So James, the Lord's half-brother, is, reiterating some of the things that Jesus taught on the Sermon on the Mount. And this is what I was talking about from the Sermon on the Mount. Do not store up for yourself treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy, or where thieves break in and steal, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys, and where thieves do not break in or steal. That's just a reiteration of what James said, but from the Sermon on the Mount. In the last days, it is in the last days that you have stored up your treasure. What does that mean? I think we kind of know. They're going to get what they deserve, kind of like the rich man when he gets to heaven. They've defrauded people. Their treasures are going to be worthless, and they will be consumed. Their flesh will be consumed like fire.
I think in the last days too, you'll show where you got your treasure.
Yes,
It'll be obvious where your treasure is in the last days.
Yeah. I mean, these are dire words when you think about it. Consuming your flesh like fire if you're hoarding or focused on riches. One last thing, and then we'll end, Derek, and we're done. Who, or most often who, are the ones who feel they do not need God? The rich. They feel they've done it on their own. I don't need God to help me. I've done this all by myself. So they are very prone to feeling self-sufficient, and they don't seem to look at their lifestyles as being fleeting. There's all types of things that you can become addicted to. And I don't mean in addictions, but you can behave like because you think you have money. So we'll leave it on that really upbeat note. All right, we'll probably finish next week. I think we're going to get pretty close. Thank you.